Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Exciting things on the branch standpoint. That's what I'm going to attempt to do, although there's some good and bad news. And I'm going to take you through all of it. So let's do about 10 minutes of me telling you what's going on and another 10 minutes of how to deal with it. So I'm going to begin with my favorite slide. Jamie's big face saying people like to visit their money. So this is why we're here, and this is actually in the age of AI, what Karen was just talking about, the trust deficit that we have that's increasing. The value of in-person matters more than ever, but it's changing. So how do we adapt to that change? Now, Jamie was out in front, and I'm just going to go like this. Yes, thank you. With being a branch poster child. So this was the beginning of last year. They're going to open 500 new branches and renovate 1,700. And he's been, for the last 8 years, a spokesperson. But he wasn't alone. B of A and Wells joined him. The real story here isn't just about the openings, but more about the renovation and refurbishment. These top three, these are our big three, represent 13,000 branches, and nearly every single one of them is about to get touched with renovation. So think about what that means. And Brad Nolan, who's the head of branch transformation at Wells, had his own Jamie moment when they made this announcement a few months ago. And he said branches are the heart of our banking institution. They change, but they are still the heart. And so now let's go to a top 10 bank with PNC. PNC was part of the announcements last year. They're going to invest $1 billion and open 100 new branches. By the end of the year, they had changed that to $1.5 billion and 200 branches. And 2 weeks ago, changed it again to $2 billion and 300 branches. And counting. And their head of retail, Alex Overstrom, actually said that they serve as vital community hubs. Thank you. Yes. Yes. One more. Yes. Thank you. And actually, their head of branch banking, Jeff Martinez, I interviewed him on our Believe in Banking podcast recently, and you can listen to him explain their branch strategy. It's simpler than you might think. So all of this investment in the branches is creating a massive surge and a massive wave of opportunity. Is this getting fun? Okay. So Karen actually covered a lot of these stats. This is from some of that same Accenture banking study that she referenced, but this is the same data we've seen over and over again. 75% of people say access to a local branch is crucial. 8 out of 10 are opening their accounts in the branch. 7 out of 10 want a branch within 15 minutes. That used to be about 10. Now it's up to 15. They don't need to go as much, but they still need it. And 86% of people have used a branch in the last year. And then, even as digital is increasing significantly in its adoption, look at what happens after 12 months. The average digital originated account opening, over half of them are no longer customers in 12 months, as opposed to the branch channel. So it's a lot more quality, maybe not as much quantity. And so we're in a great branch race. I've said this before. I started to talk about this last year. We are now well underway with this branch race, and what is a little bit scary is that not everybody is running the right race. So we've got to think about how to run smarter, not just run harder. This is something else that's happening that's a little bit scary. M&A, don't know if anyone noticed, that's happening. It was supposed to happen at the beginning of this year. iBanks, economists alike predicted the boom. But the beginning of this year, we had some stuff going on, and that didn't happen. Now it's skyrocketed with some pent-up demand. And what is interesting about this is not for the M&A itself, but what is happening to the branch transformation agenda, even if you're not undergoing M&A because of M&A. It is accelerating the pace of modernization. So think about all of a sudden wide swaths of branch networks are going to get transformed in some way, uplifted, rebranded, and that is making a new competitive benchmark. There is also complete shifts of market and real estate. They are actually new people coming right into your market. There's real estate landscapes changing overnight. There's a supply and demand issue that may come into play with vendors, with talent, with suppliers, with costs, with lead times all going up. And then the idea of having scalability, kit of parts, using your branch as a marketing channel, this isn't just a nice to have anymore. This is becoming a complete imperative. Now, there's something else, some not great news. De novos. De novos are showing to be, yes, you need to do them, but they're not always profitable. And in this particular study from Curinos, and this was super regionals, regionals, and nationals, 56% failed to reach profitability goals, which is a little bit scary. What you see on the bottom there is a little interesting. That is wild variability of one single bank, and that is typical. And so what's happening is that, yes, location has to be right. So if you're not using data to make location decisions, you need to. But also, you need to have more than just location going for you. These are very expensive bets, and you need to increase your odds. And finally, last piece of a reality dose, branch CX is a bigger problem than we thought. There was, on the heels of a study last year, about a massive gap in between what customers think they're getting from experience and what banks and credit unions think they're delivering. We did our own research, a series of mystery shops, and we just published this. This is available now. You can download it for free with this QR code. And this mystery shops report is actually revealing what is happening and what to do about it to some extent. With some stats like these, 58% of experiences began without a welcome. 62 did not inspire intent to return. And a staggering 98, nearly anybody, is using digital anything. And when we're talking about at least enabling bankers with AI, the idea that they're not even leveraging the digital tools you have available already or helping customers and members migrate to digital tools, that's a big problem. They're not digitally enabled. So there are some massive gaps happening at the customer experience level at a time where customer experience needs to be at an all-time high. If those are the symptoms, this is the diagnosis. There is a chain of disconnect that is occurring along what needs to be connected in order for successful transformation to occur. And these gaps are creating a barrier to achieving that transformation because bad things are happening in the gaps. And so these gaps are happening because you have siloed teams, you have skills gaps, and then you have traditional partners that are maybe plugging in different places. And so when you think about how these manifest, there's a gap between analytics and strategy where insight is gathered but not meaningfully activated. So you have the data, but what are you doing with it? Then I would actually say strategy needs to be circled completely because there is a big gap of retail strategy in general. But if you have it, oftentimes it's not actually informing design. Design is just being done for design's sake. It looks cool, it's techie, it's wow, it's whatever. But is it purpose-led? And then between design and execution, you can have the most beautiful prototype. But if it is not designed to be scalable and replicable across all of the myriad of dozens of conditions that you're going to have in realistic branch anything, then it's not going to actually make impact. And so the closing of this looks like this. You actually make better decisions between analytics and strategy. You have strategic design fit for purpose, and you're able to actually make impact between design and execution. So I will start with the gap between analytics and strategy. This is about better decisions, and these often manifest themselves not just about where to go, that's part of it, but what to put there. And then ultimately, how are you spending and saving? So in this first example, incredible bank, $2 billion bank based in Wisconsin, moving into Fort Myers, Florida, one of the highest growing areas of the country from a market development perspective. So analytically, we're plotting where their existing customers, they have a lot of snowbird contingencies. We divide the market into sub-markets. We look at deposit share capture and what we can predict from a fair share perspective. And then we prioritize new sites into a roadmap for them that has and continues to serve as their roadmap for how to expand in this area. But it wasn't just about where to go. It was about what to look like. And so what it ended up looking like was this. It's a giant billboard. And actually, this bank thought about going in with an ITM first. Do not enter a market with an ITM only when you have no brand awareness. You need a big billboard. But another insight is that in this area of Florida, customers wanted to be serviced at their car without having to go in. So there is literally a drive-up car servicing aspect where there's full visibility to drive up traffic, and then there's also self-serve drive-up lanes so they can actually help migrate customers to the ITMs or literally serve them at their car window. A second example, this one's right here in Texas. This is looking at a multi-market view of Third Coast Bank that was in San Antonio and Dallas, but was expanding into Fort Worth, here in Austin, and further into San Antonio. And now we're having to look not only within a market and prioritize, but look between markets. But something else of note, they were shifting their business model. They were trying to appeal from not just commercial where they were, but to more retail, high-end retail, wealth, high net worth customers, the high end of the market. And so we had to find places that had that opportunity where people were living and working, but also then design in a way that felt boutique, that feels hospitable, that feels like an environment that both commercial and their emerging retail would go into. And that's what this looks like. And these were two branches opened about the same time, one in San Antonio and the other outside of Austin in Georgetown. And then a third example, a very different example of using data, is this massive conversion that happened last year of Flagstar from New York Community Bank, which had multiple brands of its own, combining with Flagstar, 450 locations, massive conversion. The only way to do this right is with a data-led approach, and that data-led approach looks like this. There was tiering of everything. So yes, Kit of Parts was developed, and it was well-designed, of course, and nicely orchestrated, but it had multiple tiers on the exterior, multiple tiers on the interior, and decision trees explaining when to use what. And ultimately, that's why if you go into any Flagstar anywhere, and I invite you to, from New York to Michigan to Florida to California, they will all look the same. This is the best, I'm biased, but it is the best done conversion in our market today because of this approach, dealing with massive varying conditions and converting them to a consistent brand experience. This is also what M&A has in store for you, even if you're not in M&A, as branches all around you are getting converted and upgraded like this. So that's analytics and strategy. Going to the next gap between strategy and design. This is about purpose and being fit for purpose, and function must lead. Form must follow function. This is not just about looking cool and pretty. And not one size fits all is a thing you've heard 1 or 100 times, but very few people are actually doing it in an effective way. And so I want to show you what that starts to look like. I have talked on this stage before about the purpose of branches. So at the top, this is what the purpose of branches are for consumers, and it leads into what the purpose of branches are for you. These turn into different levers that you can pull and manifest themselves in the form of delivery archetypes. These are not formats. This is not hub and spoke. It is much more than that. It is strategically programmed environments that are based on different levels of purpose and what they mean at different places in your market. So you see some examples here. When we bring it to life, this is Origin Bank, and these are two sites that were opened designed and built around the same time, completely different markets for them. One is an expansion market going into a Preston Road area of Dallas to find new commercial and high net worth customers. The other, in their legacy market of Ruston, where Chase vacated what is the ugliest building ever, and they had to reinvest in it. And so what these two look like, yes, they're still the same brand, but they're designed in very different ways. The spend is different. In Dallas, we've got beautiful material and internal digital soffit and lots of high-end furniture, FF&E. In the legacy, we're going to just do the baseline of what we need to do, and you see the levers there. In expansion, acquisition is the highest. In legacy, it's about loyalty, and this is how it manifests in design. This is what purpose-led design means, and actually understanding that strategy from the beginning is how you get there. And then finally, the gap between design and execution, and this is a big one, because this is where the rubber is often very much not meeting the road. So here, you've got to make impact, and particularly with the dynamics that I talked about, you've got to move fast to market, and you have to enable change at scale. And the way you're going to do this is maybe different than how you've done it before. This example I want to show you is of Civic Credit Union, which was a unique story of CQ, giant state employees in North Carolina, having a sister division, LG, that spun out, and then was rebranding as Civic. And because they were splitting, all of the 200 branches of CQ were no longer going to be available to their members, and they had to build out a branch network from scratch in the state of North Carolina, and that turned into having to open 11 branches in under 12 months. Mammoth undertaking, led by Ashley Botticelli, who's in this room and speaking later, she's with another credit union now, but she and another leader, Sherry Bear, we also just had on our podcast, I think it goes live tomorrow, talking about what we did here. There was incredible, innovative, forward leadership at this credit union that allowed this to happen. And what ultimately happened was an environment that was very minimally built out from a construction perspective, so it can be highly flexible for what the branch of the future needs to look like, with having all kinds of new purposes for in-person engagement. So it can be reconfigured, it can be used as a community center, a hub, and a place for financial education. They're actually having members come in to do education events, teaching them how to use digital. That's the type of thing the industry needs to do more of. And they were able to move fast to market because of this minimal build-out strategy. The other way to think about moving fast to market is in different tiers of spend. You don't have to do a gut and full renovation in order to make an impact. This is an environment that was rebranded. We renamed Santa Clara County Federal Credit Union, which went by County Fed, and people thought it was a prison, to Miristar Federal Credit Union. And this was a rebrand, but they kicked up the environments for not just changing the signage, but really changing some more of the interiors, and it needed a little uplift to go with that signage. And you see what this looks like. And this is really minimal cost here that's completely changing an environment with some finishes and branded elements. And then if you kick up a little more, I mentioned earlier we're partners with PNC, and in a lot of ways, PNC is just getting started. This was an early point of success where it was just a very small refresh to elevate a wealth location. But again, look what minimal change did, not only refreshing and making the environment more consistent and modern, a few little half-wall build-outs, but it changed the flow, it changed the experience, and it made it more suitable for mass affluent, which they're trying to attract. This is another example of a little more than that Miristar example, but not a major renovation. It's really a light renovation or even a refresh. And then finally, an example. These are all major renovations with BOK Financial that they've been on a massive go-to-market streak, 8 locations over the last year that have been opened. And this is an example of, okay, when we want to kick it up more, what do we do? And so they invested a lot in exteriors, but what you'll see on the next slide here is multiple different locations all coming to life at the same time. What you don't see is a branch playbook of decisioning that is happening behind this, that is enabling all of this change to take place, because everything's done purposefully in different tiers and is able to be applied flexibly across different types of sites. So, in summary, the Great Branch Race is actually going to be not one at the starting line or even the finish line. It's going to be one in the middle, because those gaps that I talked about, they are eroding your ability to transform. And so what you think you want to do, even if you do have a strategy solidified, may not actually come to fruition. And so as you think about in all of your engagements, whoever you're working with and whatever you're doing, I would invite you to think in this way of closing the experience delivery gap. So between analytics and strategy, make better decisions. And that's about not just where, but what are you putting there and what are you spending? Do you have different tiers? And is everything data-led, or at least as much as it can be? Between strategy and design, it is about being fit for purpose, and that usually starts with answering, what is the purpose? And if you know the purpose, then the form can follow the function. And please continue to think about not being one size fits all and actually having that manifest. And then finally, making impact between design and execution. You have to move faster than you've ever moved before. You can't do it the way you did it before. So how do you enable change at scale? And ultimately, this is how you reimagine transformation in today's fast-moving world. Thank you very much. Thank you for clicking with me in the back, and enjoy the conference.